Outstanding, the ultimate accolade for teachers. We challenge primary teacher Kath Morgan to go from good to outstanding. A top inspector will observe one lesson. 2 experts will fine-tune her practice and beef up her presentation. She then gets 2 weeks to take on the advice before the inspector comes back for the final verdict.
The line between good and outstanding is a shaky line. You never know which side you're going to fall on.
Cranford Infants is a 3-form entry primary school in Hounslow, West London.
I worked for the Prince's Trust for a few years. Part of that role was going into schools, and I ended up thinking, actually, this is what I'd like to do. So gave it all up, did my training, and 5 years later, I'm here.
The school rates Kath's teaching as good.
I really enjoy teaching RE, and the children respond very well. Galimela, Alia?
Galimela, Miss Morgan.
Perfect.
She's a very committed, focused, dedicated teacher, and nothing is too much for her.
Kath will focus this challenge on her RE lessons with her Year 2 class.
Children enjoy learning about RE. They come from such a diverse number of backgrounds that they've all got their bit of knowledge that they want to put into the lessons.
You must not be rude to your family, please. Miss Morgan's a good teacher, and she's helpful, and she always helps us when we do work.
I've got a few children who didn't speak English at the beginning of the year. We've done a lot of work on getting them to speak English, and they've made good progress.
She's always nice, and I always speak good, and she'll be nice back to me.
I think an outstanding teacher is someone who meets the needs of all the children in their class. I'm probably very good at imparting knowledge to the children. What I'd like to do is give them the skills to apply that knowledge in their own lives, no matter what their religion. So I think that's what I need to work on. The unit is about religious leaders because they'll come across these names, and it's important that they know the stories behind them. I dreamt about the lesson last night, and it went quite well in my dream, so I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, really. Yeah, if it goes as well as it went in my dream, I'll be really pleased.
It's the morning of her observation. With hundreds of inspections under her belt, School Inspector Claire Gillies certainly knows an outstanding lesson when she sees one. Kath has 60 minutes to impress our inspector.
OK, we're going to start our RE lesson today. I want you to have a look at this person. Guess who you think this might be, and tell your partner what's happening in this story.
He's feeling the snow like this, isn't it? Something's happening to the waves, so it like goes together. Maybe it's God, because God does that, and God lives in the North Pole. No. Yeah.
Pupils are very clear in their minds what makes an outstanding lesson. They talk about the warmth and personality of the teacher coming across, sensing the teacher loves the subject. And when that happens, then probably all the class is 100% absorbed in what's going on.
Did anybody have an idea about who this man might be?
He might be Santa.
Why do you think he's Santa?
Because he's holding his hands like that.
He's holding his hands?
And he's got a stick, and he's going to get a wood top of it and put it top of the stick.
You got all of that from that picture. Well done. Let's actually find out if you were right. This man was Moses. When he grew up, he was worried that all of his Jewish people were being used to do all of the hard work in the country. Moses was walking around and he saw a bush that was on fire. Can you make the sounds of the fire? And a voice came out of the fire, and it was God's voice. And he said, Moses, You've got to help your people. These are the Jewish people. Moses freed them and they are in the desert. They started arguing because they had no rules. So God called Moses, so he gave him 10 rules.
I enjoy RE lessons and I like learning about different religions and different gods.
So today we're going to look at this board. We are learning to use a religious story to think about rules in our own lives. This is what you're going to have to do when you go back to your tables. Read the bad choices, talk about which ones are worst, write your 10 rules, and then get ready to show them to everybody else.
Some people are rude to their family.
What's the rule you want Omer to write?
You must worship your God.
Okay.
Sometimes I do naughty stuff at home, but now I learned how to stop it, and that's quite interesting for me.
You must not tell tales. You must not tell tales. You must not be lazy. And you were on number 15. You must. And then you had to stop, didn't you? Should we give them a round of applause? That was fantastic. What about this group over here? What did you write?
Do not be rude to your family.
Excellent.
You must worship God. Stop being lazy and help.
Stop being lazy and help. Fantastic. Excellent. Right. Can I just read one of yours quickly, Majid, out again? You must worship God. Did you know that there are some people in the world who have decided...
Do not have God.
So some people in the world have made a choice that they're not going to have a religion, and that is their choice. You've done fantastically well, and I'm going to stick these up on our 10 Commandments wall over here. We're going to make a display with them.
So how did Kath get on?
Kath, thank you very much indeed for letting me join that Year 2 RE lesson. It raised so many interesting questions, perhaps even more than you were expecting. You've got lots of lovely tricks up your sleeve just to make things flow happily, and lovely ideas to get them to be things while you're telling a story, and to shout and to be physical. And one thing I'd written down, which was the story was a little rushed. And I mean, obviously it's such an enormous story, isn't it?
I wanted to tell the whole story of Moses, and what I had was quite a short time to get quite a lot of quite difficult ideas over to them about the different people. I was getting to the 10 Commandments, that's the bit I was getting to, but I felt that it's important that the children learn about the story as well. Probably I would do that differently next time.
We were just beginning to think of what things we should have if we were going to write rules.
Yeah.
And then we were rather sort of steered into your suggestions of what people had done that was wrong, and turning that into rules.
Yeah.
Now, I just wonder whether the concept of ranking, which was great, whether we could have built on our own rules to then rank. It would have given you a bit more time to perhaps look at the story a little bit more, and then you could have said, well, we have got some rules here, but let's think about bigger rules. There were obviously just some moments when they were particularly writing. You could have done a little prodding to sort of just stretch some of them. Just wondered if perhaps a little steering for those who clearly were ready to do a little bit more, to be sort of slightly extended.
It was difficult because I wanted them to work in mixed ability groups, and I wanted them to get the discussion going. And I suppose the discussion was more important to me than what they wrote down. Maybe I could have put some prompts about using, maybe you can explain why they shouldn't do some of these things. Perhaps you can give people an alternative.
And it was excellent to pick up that really difficult one about you must worship God. And I thought absolutely right. That would have tied in so beautifully if we just set the story in a similar, everybody has a different way of reading or using Bible stories through the rules. There were many outstanding features, particularly in your generic teaching skills. And you've obviously, behind the scenes, really got them into the idea of working together. They worked jolly hard.
They did. I'm so
and
proud of them.
Thank you very much for letting me see all that.
You're welcome. During the feedback, Claire told me that she'd noticed outstanding elements in the lesson, which I was really excited about. Having said that, she gave me pointers on how to get better. That puts the pressure on a little bit now, because for my own confidence, I've got to push myself now to reach the outstanding if I possibly can.
The inspector highlighted Kath's need to stretch some of her pupils to challenge them and think more about rules in the context of their own lives. Now it's time to bring on the experts. To boost Kath's progress, help comes from primary RE advisor Leslie Pryor and voice and communications coach Ulrike Schulte-Bauchloh. They start by watching her lesson.
When you're angry, count to 5. Stop being lazy and help.
Stop being lazy and help, fantastic.
I really enjoyed the lesson. I thought there was a tremendous amount about it, which was really good. The main focus for me is going to be working with Kath to encourage her to sharpen up her learning objectives. What I would want to encourage her to do is to move from a content-led curriculum to one that's perhaps more concept-led or question-led.
And a voice came out of the fire, and it was God's voice.
There's a danger of damaging the voice, so I will work around the different resonance areas she can access. So it's not that she has to lose it, but to vary and to build and develop more the lower resonances as well.
So, Kath, perhaps the best place for us to start is to look at the lesson plan and to think about your learning intentions. And you've said here that you want to use a religious story to help the children to think about their own lives. One of the things that I'm advising lots of teachers to do is to make sure that their learning intention is always phrased as a question. And I think that really helps the children to understand what it is you want them to learn. And that makes assessment easier for the teacher, because at the end of the lesson, what you need to know is whether or not the children can answer that question. You might want a question like, what rules do we have and why?
We've spent a long time in school thinking exactly what do you want the children to learn by the end of this lesson. But I hadn't thought about using it as a question, so I'll try that.
The other thing that you can do very successfully with stories is a community of inquiry approach. That's where you would present them with a story, but rather than you posing the questions, you ask them to think of their own questions. The way I usually introduce it is, let's think of some closed questions about Cinderella, which might be, what did the pumpkin turn into? But some more open questions might be, why didn't Cinderella's father try to put a stop to what was going on?
I find that quite exciting, because I'm really keen to open up my lessons, especially in RE, because it is a subject that grabs them so much.
Yeah. I think in RE, our role, as the phrase goes, is not to be the sage on the stage with all the answers, but to be the guide on the side, encouraging children and enabling them to encounter this material and talk about it in a constructive way.
So would you do that at the beginning when you were reading the story? Would you still have planned an activity outside of that?
Yes, I think you definitely would want to do that. You don't want the children sitting on the carpet for too long. No. And maybe once you've done the community of inquiry task and you've identified an interesting question like, was Moses a good leader? That might then lead into an activity that you've planned.